Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the co-founder of Cousins Maine Lobster, Jim Tselikis. Jim, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Excited to do this.
Jim, great to have you on the show. So you're probably one of the most well-recognized faces that'll be on our podcast because of you and Saban being on Shark Tank way back in, was it 2012, I guess, right?
2012. We've aged. We've got wrinkles and gray hair. It's all happening.
That's because of franchising. That's not because of anything else. I'm looking forward to our discussion here, Jim, and kind of getting started. I'd like to kind of hear from you of the origin of Cousins Maine Lobster before Shark Tank, because if I recall from the episode, you guys had only been around like 2 months with the food truck, right? Before the show. Yeah. So we're going to get to that, but take me back to the beginning on how you guys even started the concept.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the reality is that it was really a passion project, and it kind of all started, my mom probably wouldn't be proud of me saying this, but I was living in Boston and working medical device sales, and Saban was living in Los Angeles doing real estate. And we grew up together in Maine as youngsters with all of our cousins, aunts, uncles, parents, grandparents, really close-knit family. And what you don't realize when you're growing up and what you're privy to, which was for us, it was the quality of this Maine lobster. And the beauty of having that in your backyard, you don't necessarily appreciate, again, as a kid. But what we did appreciate and knew about was our family, the togetherness, the love. And when we did all of the summer barbecues or the pool parties or even Thanksgiving and Christmas, as crazy as that sounds, we were always surrounded by Maine lobster. And our mothers were lobster fiends. They just take the lobster meat out of the shelf, steamed lobsters, dipping it in butter, drinking Chardonnay. So that's kind of how we were brought up, right? So fast forward to 2011, I was in Boston. I hadn't seen Sabe for a few years post-college. And he's like, why don't you come out here? And the reality is that I was kind of going to see an ex-girlfriend. And I went out with the intention to see the ex-girlfriend, got up with Sabe, and I spent almost every waking minute with him. And we just started going back into like this really nice connection as cousins, like very similar personalities, had a lot of fun together, and you kind of just go back down memory lane.
Right. So
one of these nights, he takes me to a sushi joint on Sunset. I've never been to California. The lights and the glitz of Sunset in LA, and the way that the idea came up was the way best ideas come up. A lot of drinking. We had sushi, but we were drinking vodka, whiskey, beer. It just was no recipe for success. But as one martini led to another, we started reminiscing about those family times I just said, about growing up in Maine.
Right.
And you realize that we were talking mostly about our family. And then we're like, gosh, isn't it crazy that we were always surrounded by lobster? Like, we didn't have any money. Our families didn't have any money, but, you could get it for kind of cheap back then.
Right.
And so we said, hey, well, why don't we do something together? Right. Like, because we were just having this amazing time. But what could it be? And at that time in Los Angeles, unbeknownst to me, the food truck industry was really growing. I didn't even know what a food truck was. And so Saban kind of talked about, this food truck idea. And I said, well, what about if we bring lobster from Maine to the West Coast where it wasn't accessible, certainly not at the quality that we knew growing up,
right.
And try to make it affordable. So kept drinking, went to bed, woke up with a terrible hangover. I flew back to Boston. And we just, for the next literally 13 or 14 months, that idea just kept going in our head. So I was going to figure out the distribution, how we get product from Maine, ship it out to the West Coast. Saban was kind of looking into the operations. Is it a restaurant? Is it a food truck? And, 2-3 months later, we said, hey, we're going to do a food truck. We're going to figure out how to get the product, the menu, the food from east to west. And that was going to be it. We were going to try and ultimately do a passion project that was representing our home state of Maine, something that our family could be excited about. And it was going to be that I stayed in Boston and he was in LA, keeping our jobs and
right.
just have a food truck on the road. So fast forward to April 27th, 2012, our food truck was rolling down the 405. I took a week off from my job, went out there, and you're, driving behind this truck that's got the state of Maine on it, a lobster. And it was really this powerful moment to be like, well, we've built something in the sense of it's a vehicle, it's on the road. We didn't know where the business was going to go.
Right.
We showed up at our very first service that night, about an hour late. There were 75 people in line waiting for us. We had 12 people on the truck. We now have like 3 or 4. No one had trained, flipped the bun. We didn't even show up with a register. So we didn't know what to do, had to go get one of those. But it was amazing. It was a phenomenal success in the way that people loved the food. We were outside talking to them about being from Maine and this product. Did like $8,000 in cash. Went home to his one bed in West Hollywood. It looked like a crime scene with all this money sitting on the floor. We didn't know what to do. Didn't have a bank account.
Right.
So let's just say we weren't buttoned up in any way. But what we did know was that people love the food. It was exciting. Food trucks were just starting to really take off and grow then. So that was the beginning. And it was that night we had an email and a phone call from a casting producer at Shark Tank saying, hey, would you guys ever, they were in season 3 at the time, would you guys ever consider coming on the show? They reach out to 30 or 40 groups a year.
Okay.
So you kind of miss the American Idols of the world where you're going to the open casting throughout the country.
Right.
And it expedites you a little bit. You still have to go through the process and application and everything about your business, but it put us a little bit to the front of the line to have an opportunity. And that was the beginning. That was the very first day and night.
Wow. First of all, what did your family think of you guys going into business together and doing this?
Lots of conversation. I mean, you generally hear, right, working with family is a bad idea.
Right.
I mean, that's what we heard. And we kind of kept it close to the breast, for us, because we didn't want anyone to poo-poo the idea, to be negative, to have those such comments.
Sure.
Never mind starting your own business. But when you really look at it, I moved out I quit my job 3 months later in 2012. I moved across the country. So when you say, what did my family think? I mean, I was leaving a secure job in medical device. All my buddies were there. I was living in Boston. I'm 2 hours from my family. Like, it seems crazy. You're going to go live on the other side of the country for a food truck. But the way Sabe and I looked at it was that, and still 12 years later, there's nothing we'd rather do than work with family. I mean, not every family member, but for us, it was
Sure.
it was a good fit. When something is hard and when you're fighting to make a business survive, last, get through the ups and downs, well, obviously the downs at that time. Right. I always looked at it and said, I'd like to go to battle with someone that is blood, that is going to care as much as me, care about our family, ourselves, and know that they're going to work to see it through. Backs are against the wall, and that worked out for us. We actually, in fairness, we took a psychology test before really getting into this to kind of understand who we are, right? It's kind of like couples could do it.
Yeah, right.
Where are you going to butt heads? Where are you going to agree on things? And that really showed us these 17 different dimensions of ourselves that showed in the beginning, okay, well, if this comes down the road, we might butt heads. And Saban may want to be more enduring, and I may want to move on and just kind of work through it. So we could always kind of reflect back rather than it was me versus him. Be like, well, remember this kind of, psych test that we took kind of insinuated this might happen.
Right.
So it actually helped us out in the early years, but it's been a really phenomenal match for us, for 12 years now.
It's been a great ride. So just to bring the audience up to speed here, you have 69 franchise locations now open, right? You have 5 corporate owned. You guys are in 27 states. This has been quite a magical ride since you franchised in 2014. And if I remember correctly from the Shark Tank episode, Barbara Cochran is the one who, well, I know you guys did the deal with her, but it was her suggestion to franchise the company.
That's right. Well, I say that she got the deal of a lifetime in terms of money invested to where she's at now with us, which we always joke about. Yes, she was the impetus and the idea for franchising. Again, Sabe and I didn't even know what franchising was. We knew that a McDonald's was a franchise and the french fries are the same experience, and the look and the feel and the food is the same. But you don't really know what that is if you're not on the inside, or if you don't know what being a franchisor is and what a franchisee means. But she said, hey, listen, you've got something that can be replicated and scaled and put into all these different markets around the country. So 2 years into business, having our own corporate trucks at that time, we were starting to learn a whole new business of franchising within the food truck lobster world.
Right.
And that was a hell of a take on. It's something that, again, it's almost like we're starting from scratch on year 2.5 or 3 because you're learning a whole new business.
Exactly. And, we talk about this on pretty much all the episodes with our founders, is that once you're in franchising, you're no longer in your case, you're no longer in the lobster business, you're in the franchise business.
Right.
And that's where, Jim, where some franchisors have difficulty in making that distinction. And that's why some franchisors fail, is because they still think they're in that business and you're not. When you're in franchising, Your job is kind of simple, and that is, it's to make your franchisees successful. And because if they're not successful,
100%.
you're not successful. Before we get too far down the line, if you don't mind me asking some questions about the Shark Tank episode, I'm so
Please.
curious. So obviously I've watched the episode. What I love is that I think the reason why you guys are one of the most well-recognized brands from the show is because Barbara, as you know, references it quite a bit as she's trying to woo another person on. It's like, well, she goes, my boys from Cousins, and I franchise them. So she likes to reference that a lot. What was it like, first of all, going on the show, especially since you guys had only been in business for a short time?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So as I mentioned, they reached out to us, and that was our first night. And over the next few weeks, in early 2012, we actually said no to Shark Tank twice. And people are like, what? You said no to going on the show? And the reason is because, we were in our infancy. You just referenced it. We didn't have any historical sales, beyond 2 months when we went on the show, 2.5 months. We didn't want to give out our idea.
Right.
There were a lot of different things. And then eventually the executive producer called and said, if you guys don't do this, you're going to be making the biggest mistake of your life. So we did it. We were shooting it in July of 2012, and it aired in October of 2012. And it was a phenomenal experience because it's, in large part, a phenomenal platform to share your business idea, to get mentorship or partners like a Barbara, who's been just the best. And it opens up new doors and opportunities to you that we would have never had the money or the means to do. Like, we wouldn't have been able to go out there and pitch on a major network that we're franchising, right? We don't have enough millions of dollars to do that at the time. So can't say enough great things about Shark Tank, their team, and of course Barbara. But the show itself was, I always say, it is as real of a reality show as you'll see. Like, we've done a bunch of TV since, and you can see some of the things are reality, and they stop and they cut and they edit and they kind of make it how they like. Shark Tank was kind of, if you're watching, you're watching what we're going through. You start behind those doors, you walk up, take your space on the dot, and you're only 25 feet from these pretty, big figures, whether that be billionaires like Cuban or just successful entrepreneurs in the sharks themselves that have built huge businesses. So it almost kind of freezes you for a second. And then out of the back, behind 30 some odd cameras, they go, and so you start you start your pitch, that first minute and a half pitch of what your business is, what you're looking for an investment, equity. And then after that, it's truly just Q&A, right? It's when you see that firing back and forth, that's very real. They speak over each other. They try to get you off their game. And I think it's actually really pretty interesting because, you can see at times where Mark's like, you guys aren't answering my question. Like, we were answering it, but someone else, gets cut off. And we just try to go in with this calm, level-headed demeanor, not too high, not too low, so that they wouldn't be able to get that emotion out of us, good or bad. And Barb told us after, the producers were in her ear going, you got to get these guys to do something. You got to get them to show something that's going to create either TV or controversy. And we just stayed like level-headed. And I think the way that we did that, and the key to our success at the time, was, we always say, if you're prepared, you've got nothing to worry about. And so we prepared for that show like we would the biggest interview, test, anything in life that you are going after. We watched every single show that was available to us. We took notes on the little 3x5 index cards like you're in middle school, right? Questions on one side, answers on the others. We researched every shark to what they did as, high school employees. Damon worked at Red Lobster. We knew that going in.
Right.
And then, of course, we researched all the sharks to say, hey, what are they going to ask? What do they want to know? And just the basics of knowing our business. While it was only 2.5 months old, everything from numbers to figures to goals, like we had to have down in our minds such that we already knew our answer as they were asking the question. And I think that allowed us to kind of cruise right here in terms of emotion, to not get too high, too low. As I said, we would go on runs in LA and we would be doing our pitch back and forth, but we're sweating and there's fire trucks and police in the background, just that commotion of a city. We would pitch each other in the mirror. Say would speak, I'd speak. We'd hit each other with pillows or books or whatever, just to try and take that person off their game. And if we could kind of work through that, then we figured, hopefully we'd be able to do the same in front of the Sharks.
Wow, that's brilliant prep, Jim. I mean, and it showed because, I've watched obviously you saw the episode. I watched it again before our show to kind of bring myself back up to speed. And I just love how, all the info, all the questions, I mean, your answers were rolling off of your tongue, like that. And you guys had, all of the answers. Of course, they rolled their eyes because you'd only been in business for 2 months, as you remember. But, Barbara just sat back there. She was quiet for the longest time. She just kind of waited till all the dust settled,
Yeah. And even that's like, we got an offer from Hersheyvec, for asking for more equity and more money. But it was, at that point I kind of said, as nice as I could put it, well, hey, if you join the team, what might you be able to do? And he's kind of like, you're down there. I'm right here. I don't need to tell you. Barbara's like, I'll answer that question. I'd do X, Y, and Z. I'd sink my teeth into this. And so that just even, the lights went off again, being like, this could be a great partner for us.
That's awesome. So life after Shark Tank then. So you go back, obviously, you get the deal done eventually, and you're still running the food truck before your franchise for like, about a year and a half, right?
Yep, correct.
And at that point, and then you start having this idea where Barbara, suggests franchising the concept. Kind of walk me through that now. So when you go ahead to franchise the company, is the idea at that point you're going to start opening regionally, or you're going to start go nationwide right away because of the contact with Barbara and the exposure from the show? Like, what was the strategic approach for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, I don't know how much strategy was in it, and I think that's kind of one of the beauties of our story, is that the drive, the work ethic, the desire, the kind of wanting a new challenge and wanting to grow a business. I don't know as though there's any, perfect recipe or formula as to how to do it. I know there are plenty of franchisors that will target, as your point, regions or areas and how to expand from there. For us, we kind of thought, hey, we originally thought that these trucks would work in warm weather climates, because they have more service throughout the whole season or the whole year.
Sure.
We thought you kind of wanted a higher disposable income, right? Because lobster is expensive. What we found 12 years later, and of course, 2, 3, 4 years into it, that this really works everywhere and anywhere. And there's actually even more brilliant pieces to it in the sense of, which I could get into later, of that it actually works in markets that I think a lot of storefronts don't. But ultimately we said, hey, again, we kind of did this on a whim. I moved out there. I quit my job. I'm like, what am I doing? When I hit the send button, emailing my owners who I really adored in the job too. 2 guys with 1 food truck, it might not be the living that you need to make to survive, never mind in LA, just in a lot of places.
Right.
I always say, I'm like, it's probably wasn't the sexiest thing to be telling my at the time girlfriend and my future in-laws, like, yeah, I have a food truck. It's not the best story, but it evolved. And we just kind of looked at it at the time. It was just, we were younger, we were single, and we just worked. And we worked and kind of waited for the next thing. And when opportunities came, we'd assess them and vet them. And so when the franchising idea came from Barbara, we said, well, yeah, we can scale this. We're going to need to learn how to do it, how to make sure that the reputation and integrity of the business is upheld with a franchisee, no matter what market we go into. I think when Shark Tank showed that we were franchising, we got thousands of requests. And those are from all over the country, to your point. So did I sit there and go, no, we don't want to go in New York yet, or we don't want to go here? No, we were ultimately looking for the best people in great markets. It sounds really simple, but it's really hard to find. You can find a great market and not a great entrepreneur, not a good owner, not a good leader, not someone who's not coachable. So it doesn't work, and vice versa. So we sold 10 out of the gate from those 2,000 plus requests. And this was in late 2014. And we did that to say, hey, we could have sold 100. But we knew that we didn't know enough at the time. Like, we had, some smarts to say, hey, we may not be franchisor experts, but we know that it probably would be a detriment to the brand if we just went out and sold 100, because so many would close because we don't have the infrastructure or the support, or this person may not be a great franchisee. So it's It's an issue if you're in an abutting territory where it takes away from the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So we sold 10 and said, let's try and learn who these people are, what their profiles are, what makes them successful or not, where are our misses. And we learned a lot from that to say, we thought this person would be great. They weren't for these reasons. Now, next time we go and find more franchisees, we know what we're looking for. Just like anything in life, the more repetition and kind of experiences you have, the better you are to kind of refine that focus, look, search for such franchisees. So, we were all over with our openings in the sense of Phoenix or Texas or Midwest and Northeast. And what we later came to learn when we were a little concerned of saying, how would it work where it rains a lot or snows in the winter or it gets cold?
Right.
It worked just as well, if not better, because people in Boston and New York and New Jersey or the Midwest, they get what it's like to put a scarf on, a pea coat, and go outside and get their food. In California, it could sprinkle rain and you kind of lose some business. So there's just those ebbs and flows and fluctuating business,
Mm-hmm.
but really it sustains for each truck. And now we've really found too in the last 7 or 8 years that we've got the ability to go into, I'll call them like elbow regions or smaller markets that are starving for great lobster, don't have any lobster, don't have quality or nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can go in there with a food truck and move around. And we don't need this massive city to support those own, a restaurant of 4 walls, for example.
That's brilliant. First of all, I agree with the expansion approach, because in your case, you guys had to be first to market because you had the platform of the show leading into it. So if you would have opened up regionally, you would have faced a lot more competition when you would have expanded out nationwide. So I think that made a lot of sense to do that. I'm curious about what you were saying earlier. So what markets work for a storefront versus a food truck?
I think our storefronts have been like, I'd say our flagship restaurant is in Asbury Park, New Jersey. It's right on the boardwalk. So yes, it slows down in the winter, but it's kind of like when I think about, where I'm from in Maine in the summertime, tourism, goes sky high and people are sitting out there on those coastal towns and they're looking for like a nice beer and a lobster roll. So those places do, when I say that, I mean kind of coastal towns, water. I think cities that have a, thriving, obviously, just that kind of food culture where there is that nice mix of tourism and locals, higher population density. And in fairness, our food trucks franchised very early on. So we had years to kind of perfect and be where we are now. Not saying we're perfect, but we're far better than we were, 6 years ago. The restaurants we started franchising years later, I think it was 2018. Then COVID came. And so we made some decisions there that were not data driven, real estate driven. So I think we made some mistakes on locations. Like those got to be A+ locations. You're putting the restaurant there for 10 years or more. Whereas the food trucks, if you fail at one spot, you can pack up and go someplace else for dinner, lunch, or the next day. So there's a little bit more nimbleness there and ability to redirect and correct. So yeah, there might be, still even more for us to learn. We've really been focusing on that for the last 2 years for the real estate side of things for restaurants. Got some nice ones in the pipeline. We just opened in San Francisco on Pier 41. So, I think those are the places we're trying to target for restaurants. But the reality is, like I said, there can be great communities that are in deep or have deep demand for a great product that we believe is affordable. Right? It's not like you're going to the high end steakhouse where you're dropping $60 for a lobster tail.
Right.
It's quite different for us.
Yeah, Jim. What about your franchise owners? Like, who is your ideal franchise owner?
Yeah. So we, as I mentioned to you earlier, great people, obviously in great markets. But for us, it's a franchisee who is coachable and trainable. We don't claim to know everything. And this is not like it's our way or the highway. We have our rules, we have a sandbox to play in. But people that can be coached and taught by our team, because we feel like, 12 years in, we've seen, just like Barbara, when we started with her, she helped us avoid a lot of pitfalls, a lot of mistakes that she had been through. So we kind of know that in the food truck space. So if you can take this and apply it, we really believe you'll be successful. We try to, when I say good people, we want to have franchisees that we like hanging out with. Say like, I want to grab a beer with you and I want to talk. And guess what I want to talk about? Not business. I like to talk about family or vacations. whatever it is that is meaningful, because I think that creates the rapport and the relationships that we're looking for. Obviously, people that are respectful, because we've found that this isn't always just roses and sunny days. Like there are hard times, be that lobster price changes or, issues with the truck if it happens, or changes we make internally that I understand if franchisees sometimes there's pushback or that they don't love. But all we ask is to have a nice mutual conversation, and we work through it with them. I think we're very collaborative. We learn a lot of things from them. The reality is they've grown their businesses and they see a lot of different things in their markets than we do in our corporate markets. So I think those are the things: coachable, respectful, and someone ultimately that I would want to work for. And I say that because, during the times of inflation and COVID and people were complaining about not being able to get, people to work at their locations, we found that it wasn't so much about a dollar more or gratuity or the financial implications for their staff. It was more about the respect that their staff would have for them as leaders and as owners to say, yes, I want to work for you. It's just like my previous job that I didn't want to quit because I loved my owners. If my owners weren't great people or were rude or never cared about their team, then it'd be easier for me to leave, or it'd be easier for me to look for some other job.
Exactly.
So when we find people like that create a really nice culture and care about their teams, oftentimes they have great retention with their employees, which allows them the ability, like us, to scale. Because then they start getting these key people and regional managers, and they can start scaling and growing their business.
Sure. Isn't the old saying is people don't leave companies, they leave bosses?
Yeah, that's right. And it's not, and listen, I didn't just say anything that wasn't recreating the wheel. It just goes to show, again, almost like Saban and I working together as your question earlier about like being blood or family.
Yeah.
You want to work with people that care about their team, about their business. And that, I think, just breeds it's infectious. It breeds success and opportunity.
So in order for me to be successful as a franchisee, what do you think are some of the most important traits?
I think, for us, we always say, like, you just got to have that worker mentality when you start as a franchisee. We've got totally different franchisees now that come with other franchise experience, food experience. They've got a lot of businesses. But when we started, a lot of them are mom and pops or people that were stay-at-home moms or former insurance people or former lawyers. And so this is a whole new thing to them. So I think as long as you can apply yourself to really listen to what we're coaching, to apply that, and to work really hard out the gate to learn everything about your food truck, the inventory, every single aspect of the job, to do the job, to take the trash out so that your employees see that, to clean the grill, to pick lobster meat, then you understand the business and you've done it and your staff sees you doing it and they know that you can do that as well and you expect the same from them. I think the creativity is a big one in our space because, listen, I always say if you can find people with a food truck, you will do sales. So what are you doing creatively in your market to find people?
Right.
And it's just that some of that is obviously us coaching, but like you could go to a swim meet because all the kids, boys and girls, are swimming, but all their parents are there. And when they come out of the swim meet, they're all there looking to eat. Church. You just think about a church. You can find a parking lot and people are coming out of church. Yes, there could be a strawberry festival. It could be music festivals. Office buildings were obviously huge, but post-COVID, not as effective. And so I think for us, it's really just finding different places that, in the wintertime, in the Northeast, we had a lot of franchisees going to ski shops, going to places where consumers are going to go. Friday nights at liquor stores. They're stopping at the liquor store on the way home. Well, guess what? We draw people. The liquor store sales go up, so they're happy that they have us. It's like a win-win. So I think creativity is a big one. Like I said, respect. And I think at the end of the day, the ability to just understand that the path to scaling is about kind of putting in the work early on, making sure that, yes, your position as a franchisee may evolve to grow your business, but you got to take care of your house.
Yeah, it sounds like specifically with your brand too, that the franchisees really need to be really nimble and, being creative because again, the magic of your business on the food truck side of things, of course, is you're going to the people. So I would imagine that just demographic wise or location wise, there's going to be nuances in different regions of the country and where this is going to work better than other places.
Yeah, there's no question. And I go back to even what I said about saving myself, like that whole idea of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
The days of, our first couple openings, we'd go to the grand openings. The franchisee would be at the truck. You had the truck from 8 in the morning till 11 at night when you're so busy and have these lines, and you come back to your office, trying to do clean and preparing for the next day with lobster meat product, etc. Well, what about all your emails of people that are interested in catering or trying to find out where you are, or phone calls that are coming in? So
Right.
just that evolution, the way to do that is preparing such that now, like, our training and our launches are so seamless. And by that, I mean, like, our franchisees, before they even open, have 4 to 6 months of bookings so that they're not worried when they come back that first night or where they're going tomorrow or next week or next month. That's booked and set. So you've kind of got your sales established in your calendar. It doesn't mean you always know the exact sales that you're getting into,
Right.
but then you can focus on the other aspects of the business. So I think just kind of having the foresight to look into the future, prepare for quite literally a moving vehicle, to make it most successful is another great trait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What about investment range? Now, what's the latest investment range for the franchise?
Yeah. So for a food truck, we're depending on the bells and whistles you put on it. Think about your own car. You could have more or less, I guess, quite literally bells or whistles. Some of our guys have levelers on their trucks. If they're on a hill, it makes it
Sure.
level. But our trucks are now generally between $280,000. Restaurants almost double that.
Mm-hmm.
But the trucks have a really phenomenal AUV of just under 1.4 million. And so in a really
Wow.
small space, you can pump out a lot of product, do some pretty high sales. And if you're managing your team right, they've been really healthy businesses for our franchisees, which is indicative of, we have a lot of internal growth. One of our franchisees started with one truck, and he's got 19 committed now,
Wow.
13 of which are open. But you'll see that on most of our franchisees. I'd say, everyone's got 2 to 3, but there are plenty that have 5 to 7, 7 to 10 for some other franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
They've been going in remote locations, so they might live where they started their first truck and grow around there. But then they say, hey, this market that's states away or a plane ride even is something that they want to tackle, and we go over the business application and process with them. And if they have that team in place, because they're a great leader,
Right.
and they have these key figures, they now have their regional managers, and they're oftentimes just flying to those cities to oversee the operation.
Sure. So, Jim, how big is the territory for a single unit franchise?
Yeah, it's generally population-wise between 1.5 million, depending. And that depends on population density, depends on drive time.
Mm-hmm.
There's some places a little bit more rural, with space in between where you're actually going to serve. But that's the rough population, and it's done by counties for the food truck. So you have a territory of these counties, zip codes, whatever you want to call it, and that's kind of where you need to stay within. We'll have our franchisees can put in for out of territory requests where they can drive out of it if we approve it. And that's good for them to get a little spike in business and also introduce us to new markets.
Sure. That's a big territory. How many food trucks would you say is an average range that would suffice for a territory of 1 million people?
Well, so that's an interesting point as well. There are plenty of our territories that have 2 to 4 food trucks within their original franchise agreement. They
Mm-hmm.
start with one, they have the space, and they're like, well, I'm booked up 52 weeks a year, and I'm turning down a lot of events. I want truck number 2. And then as that continues to happen, I want truck number 3, and they can almost literally double, triple their sales if they're doing things correctly. And then once they feel like we collectively feel like there's enough there to serve the consumer base,
Mm-hmm.
then we might look at a new territory. And then even then, there's certain things you see different dynamics, like in Los Angeles where we own. There's just so much going on in Los Angeles, from food to the movies to the surfing to the mountains to there's always something new every day. It's like, wow, it's so many options for people.
Right.
I just went to Rochester, New York 3 weeks ago for a grand opening. They did $60,000 in 2 days. And to me, I just sit there and go, this is a tight-knit, small community. So if they say, hey, we're coming, this is our opening, word of mouth, like in a little town like that, like where I'm from in Maine,
Right.
spreads like wildfire. It doesn't spread the same in New York City or in
Sure.
LA because there's just so much to compete with. So you can find also that there's sometimes different metrics of how many trucks can actually fit in that territory.
Okay, so if I was a single unit franchise owner, do I commit to one truck, one territory?
That's correct. Yes, and then it kind of evolves to say, hey, like we've been doing a lot of multi-unit deals where you say, hey, I want a little more population, and I'll
Hmm.
do 3 trucks. And then
Okay.
there's the timing to start truck 1, truck 2, truck 3, and then on to the next thing.
Uh, Operationally, you know what's going through my head? How often is it that a truck is running out of lobster meat during one of these events?
Yeah, and that's kind of the pitfalls I referenced that we handled early on, so that we fortunately don't have that for franchisees now. They can pump major volume, and the way that we've evolved our trucks with refrigeration space, with cook space, countertop space, to allow us to leave for a day and know exactly what we're doing for sales and projected. I
Right.
mean, I just told you 60 grand in Rochester, two
Right.
days, never ran out of lobster meat.
Holy cow.
So we've found a way to really pack it efficiently.
Yeah.
Because listen, there are a lot of people that said to us early on, "Oh, it's good to run out or good to sell out. It shows that your product's wanted." I said, "Well, yeah, that is good that people want your product, but also you're leaving money on the table and you're leaving customers upset that didn't get your food.
Right.
So why would you ever want to run? Why would you ever want to run out?" So that was really early on, our ways of trying to correct that and make sure that that wasn't, an option.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thanks for answering that, clarifying that, because I was thinking about, my gosh, this must happen like all the time. They're running out of product, especially these huge events, you know? Jim, you've been so transparent. I appreciate it. What's been one of the biggest challenges that you and Saban have faced, would you say, over the years, and how'd you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on, one of the biggest, I mean, I'm talking 2014, 15, finding a food truck fabricator builder that is going to build a real high quality product that franchisees are going to be happy with. And then on top of that, have the customer service and commitment after delivery to help franchisees, to let them know if there's issues, what to do to service those issues. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that's a hard one because it's a big ask, it's a big investment for a franchisee as it was for us.
Sure.
And people don't realize these trucks are going over bumps and bruises and potholes, and they're driving, their kitchens that are driving. So is going to be wear and tear. So that was a big one for us to make sure we got right. And we had issues. We definitely had issues in the beginning that I really believe corrected and did our best and showed our franchisees who we were as people to make them right. And then I think, obviously we're in the lobster game. So lobster is a wild caught product. It is not like saying, hey, I need 20,000 more trinkets or
Right.
100,000 pounds of this. Like there is, when we bring our franchisees to Maine, oftentimes it's in the summertime, it's beautiful and sunny out. They're like, wow, this is beautiful. They don't see the lobstermen that are out fishing in the winter and the ripping winds and the swells when it's raining, snowing, freezing. It's hard to catch and you can't always predict everything. So to
Mm.
make sure that we are taking care of our entire ecosystem with always having product that is the highest quality that we expect, our Cousins Maine Lobster spec, that we have that procured and ready to go to the system. That's obviously always been evolving to say, hey, as our business grows, we need so much more. Can't be without it. So that's always still to this day, the challenge, because we want to make sure that we're providing our business. And then I think, just ultimately, if you're growing a franchise as a franchisor, what are you doing to make sure that your business is sustainable, that you have these consistencies in it to make sure that it's long lasting, that you have people on our team as the franchisor, which you referenced earlier, to just be an asset every single day to make our franchisees better.
Sure.
We don't sit there and woo you or swoon you and award a territory and then say, okay, you've launched, see you later. We actually look at it quite the opposite of saying, once you launch, it's even more, one-on-one time, be it social media, marketing, legal, HR, compliance, training, the financial side of things that we're looking at to say, hey, you had a pretty good month. It can be better, and here's how. In any aspect of the business, and I think that's kind of, we'll call it ongoing education or ongoing desire for us to make them better. We always say we will work as hard or harder than the franchisees, and so if they want to come and talk to anyone on our team over and over again, we're here. And I think that creates two things: the ability to be consistent and have people buy in and care, and I think that it also creates a culture of we say family first of where it's genuinely that. And I
Sure.
think if you care about your team, your franchisees, goes both ways. It's a pretty good little thing.
Oh yeah. There's nothing more important, right, than your franchisees knowing that you care, because even when as leaders we make mistakes, you try to make the best decisions. You try to do what's right, maybe not always what's popular, as we say in franchising, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when they know that, you're trying to put them first. And as a franchisor, we have to delay our gratification in our growth because we have to put them first.
Yeah. I mean, Barbara said early on, she's like, when we started this, she's like, just be very clear. They aren't working for you. You're working for them. I think that's right, because it's, we know that they pay us a royalty. They know it, right?
Yep.
They invested in this business and brand. Like it's all very transparent. So we need to make sure that we're there, every day and supporting and making sure that collectively the whole business and brand gets better, but also each individual unit.
What's been your biggest surprise since franchising?
Biggest surprise. It's a good question. For me, I think the biggest surprise is the struggle to get from 1 to 10 or 12, that area. Cause a lot of people would see that. My buddies would be like, wow, you get 6 trucks now, or 7 or 8, that's pretty good. Like, yeah, but we were, as a franchisor, we're almost smaller in that way, because the franchisees collectively make up 6, 8, 10 trucks,
Right.
and they could complain or state these certain things that, is almost this, like, I don't want to call it butting the heads, but it's the line of where, like, how things evolve and go. And then you realize that in the surprise aspect, it's kind of like once the brand is out there and starts to service, it's not that it sells itself, but there are more eyes on it. And we've had more
Hmm.
PR, and we've been on certain shows. And then going from 10 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, it almost kind of spreads like wildfire, and it becomes like anything else in life. When you do it long enough, it becomes that second nature of, like, this is what everyone in our business does. This is how it starts, from onboard or vetting to onboarding to launch day to there and beyond. So I think probably the surprise is how difficult it was from 1 to 10
Yeah.
versus beyond.
Yeah. And your company's going to evolve. No question about it. When you guys get to 100 franchise, and we're only a couple years away from that, you're going to look different. And
Yeah.
even people that are going to invest in you and become franchise owners are going to be different.
Of course. I mean,
Yeah,
we've seen that, like I referenced the mom and pops to more sophisticated
totally.
franchisees. And I don't mean as people, I just mean their experience of,
Sure.
of food or franchising. They come in with, like, understanding how this kind of works. And that has evolved, and certainly I think that our presence and footprint throughout the country has helped that. I guess the other big surprise is, like, we used to have one food truck in 2012, and we're like, what the hell are we doing? And we were just flying by the seat of our pants trying to figure it out. And now you look at it, and we used to say then, we're like, when you think of lobster, we want you to think of Cousins Maine Lobster. When
Mhm.
you see this hat, we always used to say, well, the Boston Red Sox, right? They got the Sox. It doesn't
Right.
say Boston Red Sox. You just know that's a Boston Red Sox. So,
True.
like, we always wanted, like, hey, when you see the logo, be like connected. Be like, oh, I saw them on the Today Show or Shark Tank, or I saw their truck, or I ate their lobster roll. They were at this event. And to hear those stories that just come out of everywhere now, to know that, maybe out of every 10 people you ask, maybe 7 or 8 people have heard of our business. Like, that's a really
That's
meaningful
amazing.
feeling to us. Yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
something like we're grateful for it. Never thought it'd be a thing, and that's definitely changed since the days of one truck.
That's sweet. Jim, so what's the long-term vision for the company for you guys?
Yeah, so we really spent a lot of time trying to, like I kind of mentioned, strengthen the infrastructure, the team, the franchisor team to support franchisees. We would oftentimes hire new positions on our team even before the growth dictated it, such that they were trained on board and ready to support. And so while we were doing that, we were saying, hey, we're kind of buttoning up the foundation. What we never really did was pour fuel on the fire for growth, like actively going out and getting new franchising growth. A lot of it was internal. A lot of it was what I said. Someone saw us, they put in an
Yeah.
inquiry, and that would evolve that way. So we really, like, we're a small family of franchisees, although we have a decent amount of units. And now in the last about year and a half, we're really focusing on that franchise development, the growth, the strategy, the restaurants, the trucks, hence kind of where we see ourselves going. This year, I think we'll finish with about 24 new units. Next year, we're anticipating 35. Following year, 40, 45, and 50. So I think that the year after that. So I think by 2028, we're really intending to be around 250 units throughout the country. And so that's really, kind of been the focal point in terms of saying, hey, we love what we're doing. It's a challenge. Like, we love having new franchisees and new blood, and we love watching the current franchisees succeed. Like, it is very cool still to this day. I was just at an opening, and one of our franchisees is telling me about, how it's changed his life, his family's life, from earnings to happiness. And there's nothing cooler than that.
Isn't that amazing?
I love seeing our own corporate staff when we give raises or bonuses and how their lives change. Like, it sounds really cheesy. Like, I'm sitting here going, oh, it makes me so happy, but it genuinely does, because I think, hey, we've built something here that isn't just about Jim and Saban running a food truck and trying to put dinner on the table. This is something that is fun because it's becoming more recognizable. The consumers love the product and are huge supporters, but our own franchisees and corporate staff, I think, have seen the successes and growth happen for them too.
Wow. Jim, just to kind of come full circle as we wrap things up here, just think about how this whole thing started with you flying out to LA, getting together with Saban. You guys are out drinking and coming up with this whole idea. And in the whole outcome of this ultimately is you changed people's lives through your franchise opportunity, and you're giving people an incredible product on top of everything else. But most of us as founders, we don't think about, when we're starting our business, we don't think about the impact that you're going to inevitably make. And, I don't care what the brand is. It could be, child related. It could be home services. It could be lobster. At the end of the day, you've created something so wonderful where you're changing somebody's life. And like you said, you've made an impact on this person, financially and their happiness. And there's nothing better than that. It's far grander than what you ever expected.
No, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that, because you just don't have the ability to think that far out. Right? You think, hey, can I make one food truck turn into two? Can I have three in Los Angeles, and can I survive on that and just do three and live near my cousin and I guess live in the sun for a few years before I come back east? But you just, because you don't see it. And then you realize that years later, this manager that we have in Nashville that's been there for 7 years and is so committed to the business or brand, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. What you do for our business and brand and team, and hopefully what you're feeling from us too. And be that franchisee, staff, crew, consumer, there's still nothing better than, day one, the first year in LA, we'd sit there, we'd go to the truck and we'd stand back like at a Venice First Friday event, 8:00 at night. It's kind of getting dark. And you just see people eating our food and we just watch them. You just watch them smile or be like, oh my gosh, their boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever, you gotta have a bite of this. They're taking photos, putting it on Instagram. Like, there's nothing better than that, just to see people's, truly, their happiness. And that doesn't mean that we're perfect. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't complain about something being wrong and we fix it. But for the most part, that is the biggest kind of thing that I'm most grateful for, to your point, is having an impact that transcends into other people's lives and makes them happy.
Right.
Never would have thought that was possible.
Jim, if someone was interested in learning more about Cousins Maine Lobster, where would they get more info?
Yeah. So in terms of joining the family or the team as a franchisee, it's cousinsmainelobster.com. There's a place to put in your franchise request there. If you just want to learn about where our food trucks or restaurants are, or we ship product from Maine, which I need to send you overnight to your houses. So if there's no truck or restaurant with you, we send live lobster, mac and cheese, lobster pot pies, ales, chowder, bisque, all overnight to your house. So that can all be found at cousinsmainelobster.com or on Facebook or on Instagram as well.
Oh my gosh, my mouth is watering. Okay, I want to finish up here with the franchise tip jar. Because we talked about this earlier, the franchise community is so generous with sharing information. I know, you've given me so much here and I appreciate it. If an entrepreneur was looking to start to franchise their company, is there maybe a piece of advice that you give them before they go ahead and franchise their business?
Yeah, it would. First of all, it's really hard. I think that because I've got buddies that come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm like, okay, well, because I'm the first guy to say, for us, it was hard work, there's opportunity, but there's a piece of luck in there. And I'm not saying Shark Tank was the luck, but it was certainly a platform and it was helpful. We got that because we were promoting ourselves that first night. We put it out on Twitter when that was just a photo of me and my cousin on the rocks with our grandfather being like, we're bringing Maine Lobster tonight to this place. And Shark Tank saw it, they came. So it does come from someplace.
Sure.
But I'd say that it's one, very hard. So be ready for it. The biggest tip I'd give if you're really just starting out would be to make sure that you do your FDD, franchise disclosure documents, correctly, legally, with a true source that you're actually going to invest in to do it for you. I've seen other people that try and kind of take the shortcut, do it on their own, kind of come up with their version of, and there's so many things missed from either protection, legalese, what is going to be hopefully make you profitable someday, and just the whole handbook of how this entire thing is going to run. Ours has evolved so much over the course of time, our ops manual, our FDD, where it's gotten better and better and thicker and thicker and thicker.
Of course.
But I think that it's daunting to look at paying 30, 40 grand, 2013 for this FDD and your franchise agreements. But that is nothing that Save and I could have done. That's one tip I would definitely give. And I think the other thing is it's hard to attract franchisees, right? When you're so small, when you're 2, 3, 4 people, especially if you don't go on Shark Tank. So what is the means that you are going to have, be that money, marketing, networking, spend, whatever it may be, your strategies you reference, to actually garner requests? Because you can go get 100 requests and get 1 or 2 that are maybe viable.
Right.
And that doesn't even mean they close. So it can be a long road if you don't have that funnel coming in of requests. So there's got to be some, looking back now, strategy, thought, spend, whatever it is going to do to get you those inquiries. Because without inquiries, you're not going to have any sales.
That's
of
right.
New franchises. And then you spend this money, or you take a long time trying to get something to pop, and you might kind of shoot yourself in the foot before you even get going.
Yeah. Jim, great advice. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. This has been awesome. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.